Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I'm joined once again by Konstantinos and Leo, and today we're going to be having a deeper look at what the guys at Bellum have been working on as last while. So, guys, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having us again.
Back. Yeah.
Especially after talking about lore so much here.
I love hearing the lore of your world.
You press mute and close the cameras, all right?
we had to,
Everybody had gone.
We had to leave him here for about a couple hours until he finished talking about it. So yeah, since we last came here, we talked a little bit about how we're going to be having an army builder.
Mm-hmm.
And now we wanted to show you a little bit about how it works before we actually release it. Mm-hmm. So to give you a little bit of a preview, see how everything...
Yeah, cool. So do you have it loaded?
Aha. Absolutely. Almost as if I had it ready.
All right, so what exactly are we seeing here? So this is the builder for the 100 Kingdoms.
Yeah, exactly. So now this is, for example, if you go from home, you would see the Browse faction, you'll be able to create a list. Mm-hmm. Now, Browse factions is pretty much like a way for you to see exactly what there is, what you can have, read a little bit about the rules and so on. But the most important thing is actually create an army list.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're naming a piece of war.
Yeah, and let's make a 100 Kingdoms army list.
Cool.
So now the thing is that characters in the world of Conquest, not only do they have a role in the battle, mm-hmm. but they're also crucial in how to make an army list. Mm-hmm. So essentially, every time you create an army list, what you're doing essentially is you're making sub-lists. Mm-hmm. So every character has mainstay and restricted choices. Now you'll be able to see, for example, here the Noble Lord. You'll see that underneath where the warbands are, you'll be able to see the mainstays and restricted. Now these are the regiments that they have based on that they can bring onto the table based on the lore.
Yeah.
So the mainstay regiments are the ones that make up the bulk of the warbands that a character can bring, and the restricted ones are more elite regiments, or they're fewer in numbers according to the lore.
Well, looking at the longbowmen, they sound like they're a bit more of a specialist unit versus the militia bowmen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Exactly. So, for example, if we want to make, how that would work is if you wanted to make a list. Let's add a Noble Lord. This is a infantry Noble Lord, and right next to that you would find a button that would allow you to choose all the different options. Mm-hmm. For example, you'll make one of your characters could become a Warlord.
Yep.
Now, a Warlord means that this character has a supremacy ability.
Okay.
That's very important because that supremacy ability is different for every type of character. Mm-hmm. For example, the Noble Lord would give a very good bonus for the entirety of a turn to impact attacks, mm-hmm. and give you extra attacks throughout your army. Or, mm-hmm. for example, a priest could remove the broken status from all of your regiments. Mm-hmm. All of these are powerful abilities that you can use once per game, mm-hmm. and they differ according to what the lore would suggest for that character. Yeah. So if we wanted to make a list, then let's put a Noble Lord to be as a Warlord. Mm-hmm. We would have the different heirlooms, items that a character could choose from. They all have their own backstory, and when we release the army lists, you'll be able to find more information about that.
Yep.
And then we have certain options that are specific to the characters. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the Noble Lords have options that would pertain to, let's say, things that were trained in the past, mm-hmm. reflects a little bit their background, and gives you the ability to tailor it a little bit and have your own stories into the game. Imagine your own lord and how that lord would play and function within the game.
Even just looking at a couple of the options here, I'm seeing duelist and powerful physique. So my guy might be absolutely gigantic and huge and just very brutal in a fight. Or I can imagine him as slightly a lighter, more fencer-style character, mm-hmm. if I make him a duelist, things like that.
Exactly.
It's something that we had discussed before, that we want people to be able to tell a story through the battle. So customizing it to the point that you, in brackets, identify with the character serves as your Warlord, mm-hmm. is an option we wanted from the very beginning. And we're glad that we found a way through the system to show this. The heirlooms are actually, again, another step towards that direction. It gives you a part of his backstory or her backstory, when you're making the list. So essentially, you can make a character, sort of, that you like to play for his or her story.
Yeah, and then I assume the playstyle from that story is reflected on the tabletop.
Of course.
Cool.
Exactly,
cool.
and the thing with the thing with most characters in Conquest is that they're not these larger than life characters. They when they fight, that vulnerability that they may have, you can see it on the actual table. For example, if a character is attached to a regiment and that regiment is destroyed, then the character actually dies with them. So it's something very important to know that although you can tailor them, although you can make them very powerful and they can fight, they still are as powerful as their faction allows them to be, as their physique would allow them. So that gives a good perspective into how, in realism, into how to creating a character.
It also leaves you with the tactical dilemma of the risk reward of actually throwing that character into a fight. You know, because there are some games you play where it feels like your characters are nearly beyond human, slightly, where they can stand and take so much more punishment than just, you know, Joe average over here. But sometimes I suppose that reflects better training, things like that. But I like the idea that these guys they're better trained, they're better armed, they're doing more for you, but they are still quite vulnerable to that, you know, that one sword slash across the neck that takes their head off in the middle of a fight. All right, so what would we add after the Warlord?
So the button here, actually, there's also a help button that we have. Make sure that players that are new to the army builder can navigate their way through it. So the way we would go about it is that we would add now regiments to that character to create this sublist. Now, based on the options that a character has, we could, for example, add, let's say, 2 regiments of men-at-arms. Now, these, for example, are mainstay, as you might see right here. Now, you can choose up to 4 regiments for every character. But you need to have at least 1 mainstay for every restricted. So if I wanted, for example, to add longbowmen...
Yeah, you could now have 2 because you have 2 mainstays.
Exactly. And now I could have 2 because they're restricted, and I have 1 mainstay for every restricted. Now, if I wanted to add a few more things to every regiment, I could go to their options and I could add stance right here. I could add command upgrades, and many regiments have additional command models that are reflected to the lore. For example, they might have a seasoned veteran that they gives them combat bonuses and so forth, or give them neophytes that they're spiritual individuals that allow priests to work their blessings on the regiment.
Awesome.
So that will be that. Now the other thing is, as you're making a list, you can always go back here and you can check how your list is being formed. So that's always something you can see. You can always have all your stats here. And what I meant about creating sublists is, for example, if I were to deselect the regiment option, and I will go up and let's say add another, let's say theist priest. Let's do a theist priest right here. Now, what I could do, I could go here and I could add a regiment to that character. Now, the theist priest can only bring Sicarii.
Yeah, as their mainstay. Oh, well, only those. Okay.
Yeah, actually,
there is a whole. I think we have kind of scratched the surface a bit. That there was a very strong movement, both by the emperor when there was an empire, and the orders to muzzle the organized church that the theists have. Of course, there was a lot of kickbacks, but for now, at least, and I'm saying this for now because the story develops, balances of power change, and the clash with the spires that is about to happen will bring more to the table for everyone, more arguments for everyone. But so for now, yeah, the church is muzzled to simple Sicarii. Originally, they held a knife and they serve as bodyguards to important priests or the churches themselves, the chapels, etc. Slowly that evolved, and due to technicality, the knife got bigger and bigger and bigger. So they have some form of punishing power, but they are by no means an organized army. They are fanatics, yes. They serve their priests with extreme prejudice, and they are ready to defend with their lives and take lives with fevers. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like that kind of, but it does provide for a strong element to the world. That fanaticism is there. It's there. Yeah. And the Theist Church has always been more organized, has always pressured people. That's why the Deist Church appeared as sort of a counterbalance between the two. But slowly there are new alliances between what we call the Peneticum, which is the headquarters of the Theist Church, and the nobles, because back in the old days, it's where nobility got its acceptance as the leaders of the world. Exactly.
The divine right to rule.
Exactly. Previously, it was the orders, but they were outnumbered, so they turned to someone who was much more ready to cooperate. So there are new negotiations. Maybe the church is slowly arming itself. There's a lot of fear about that. Maybe it will lead to a counter argument again. And
well, I do wonder if the Sicarii still call it a knife, even though it's quite clearly a big knife.
But that's a very good highlight, and that's the reason I wanted to get a little bit into the lore with the priest and the Sicarii, is that every choice you see here, every mainstay, every restricted, every option that you have to create as a warband for your characters is deeply rooted within the lore. So you're not you're not just creating a list based on whatever you want there, whatever you find, just whatever just whatever you might find there, but you have to make it work. It works in the lore, like your army list reflects the story you have created in your head.
Now, I am seeing on the priest here, you must select at least one spell.
Yes. Now, what happens is that there are two kinds of casters, let's say. Spell is not a very good word for that, but what actually happens is that there are wizards, there are that kind of casters, and there are also priests in the game. Now, they both have their own approaches to casting, let's say, quote unquote, and they have their own approach into buffing or augmenting the abilities of their target. And specifically, now the priest delves more into the protective, into these kind of things that provide evasion or defense, or they make regiment blessed, and there are all these different bonuses that they provide in battle. But it's always important to remember that actually the balancing that has been done here not only reflects the lore, but also make sure that there is a very specific way that we can balance the game out in that regard.
Again, the spells reflect that a priest's role in the minds of the people is that of the shepherd, of the protector.
Yeah,
and
it's inspiration.
Exact, and the powers he has come from that faith. So they are sort of restricted into the role that this faith provides.
And also, we also have a picture of the
that is actually cool.
of the sculpt that we have for the Theist priest.
Right, let me make sure I get this correct, because I hope I have it. Ta-da!
Absolutely.
Yes.
Now that is the sculpt that we have for the Theist priest, and that's one that we have. We showcased back at the UK Expo when we were there, and we wanted the miniature to reflect this nature, to reflect this grandiosity that
and this distance from being muzzled militarily. I mean, you can see that this is not a very muzzled priest.
No, but you can see from the pose, it sounds as if he's giving a bit of oratory there. He's crying out a benediction, onward for the glory of your masters, that kind of thing, but still carrying a rather large knife.
And a lot of, breastplate and everything, but still there are robes.
Not military.
Exactly. And that's kind of the idea, that slowly but steadily they have their own version of protecting themselves and bringing the word of the Theos, as they call their god.
Yeah. Well, if we compare him to our actual noble lord, you can instantly see a very different sort of school of thought. So he looks very regal, very commanding, whereas the other one, he feels more like a priest. He feels more like the person you would expect to see in the middle of a town square, standing, decrying the sins of man to return to the faith, and to actually join up, become a Sicario, and carry a knife.
Carry an increasingly large knife. This is actually one of our new sculpts, and this is now the Noble Lord on foot, the infantry version of that, which is another...
Sorry, if I may, because people might not know that, we're talking about the infantry version because, as Leo said earlier, characters join regiments, existing regiments, so they have to actually be on the same type of unit. So yes, for the Noble Lord we have two versions. We have the infantry one and the knight one, with slight variations on the backstory as well. Yeah, exactly. That is the mounted versions. I think we spoke before how the mounted version has undergone knighting training.
Yes.
So they are actually both lords, yes, but they have also been knighted.
And I'm sure that probably transfers across to your army list for different schools of combat for them.
Absolutely. Now, the thing you'll see is that the infantry lord now has a different entry from the noble lord as a cavalry. Now, although currently they are pretty much the same in terms of actual stats. In the actual army list, there is one is an upgrade to the other. So right now is let's say one entry that is splits off to two, and one being able to join cavalry regiments, although the other being able to join infantry regiments, and that really actually determines their style of play.
Well, one thing I would like to compare is the mainstay versus the restricted for both types of lord. Is that different, or is it currently the same?
Currently, it is the same because it has to do with their lore and their background. Although the knight lore, for example, is not mounted, they still provide the same bonuses to a mobile army. They could still be adept and good at tacticians.
Serving a noble house means that you can have household knights.
I see. For instance. So it's more the political influence they can exert to actually draw units into their force.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
On a contrast, for example, we'll have other characters such as the Imperial Officer that you'll see their warbands and what they can bring onto the table differs. And they can also have battlefield drills that they act as orders that the Imperial Officer can give out with different supremacy abilities and like.
Now, one question for the battlefield drills. It says a draw event. Now I know you guys use a card activation sequence within the game. Does that mean that event is drawn from your deck that you could then use? Yeah.
Well, characters are placed on the command stack, and that is the deck that determines the order of activation. The same. They do, however, draw actions from a completely different pool.
Sorry.
So what happens is that there are two things of importance here. Now, draw events is something that is common for regiments and for characters, and what that means is that every time you draw the card, the moment you draw it, if there's a draw event, you must or may, depends on the rule, use that. So, for example, let's say the Ferromancer, let's say from the Spires, could have a Ferromancy that allows that character to immediately draw and activate another regiment instead. So he awakens, let's say, a regiment of force-grown drones and pushes them beyond their limits to act, and that would be a draw event. That's something that happens the moment you draw that card before you take any actions.
Gotcha.
On the other hand, what happens with characters is that when you draw their card, they only get to have one action instead of two. Now, the characters move, fight, and do everything with their regiment. So when you draw their card, you can, let's say, cast or use an ability. You may, on top of any draw events that you have, you may seek new refuge, and that is join another regiment of your warband. Warband being the regiments that you bring with you, that every character brings with them.
So I couldn't jump into, say, the Skari unit being a noble lord because they wouldn't be of my regiment.
Exactly, yeah, you wouldn't be able to go there. Or for example, you'll see that, let's say, a noble lord could not jump onto the men-at-arms of another lord. It has to do with who they bring in. It has to do with that.
Yeah, those are the men who are under their command, and to jump in and take someone else's units over wouldn't really be good etiquette on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly it. Especially with the 100 that are more militaristic, they're more about the influence that they have on their own troops. They would never want another lord to just start taking control of their troops. That would create a little bit of. You
might get handbags at dawn.
Yeah.
Those handbags being swords.
Let's deal with this battle, and then we'll have another.
And then we'll have a private talk with larger than normal knives. So and you'll see here how the list is being formed, and you'll notice how now the list is being made by sublists. So now you have a completely different list for the Theist Priest and a completely different list for the Noble Lord.
Yeah, I am liking how clear everything is laid out within the little side list that you have here. It looks beautiful, but I'm very quickly able to figure out where and what I'm looking at. Because if I quickly look at the Longbowmen, okay, what's my range? Special rules: 28 arcing fire, rock and roll. They have cleave 1 and barrage, and as soon as I know those couple of special rules, I can just work away at it without checking stuff.
And at any point, you can click on the actual entries, and you can read their information or add in anything here. Now, this is also a good segue to how having this style of forming a list, having this light, medium, and heavy sort of mechanic. What we can do is that we can very well approach balancing into the game. For example, something being a light regiment as opposed to being a medium regiment could have a major impact on the way it plays, or for the amount of turns that it plays, given that how medium or heavy regiments coming later on during the battle. And this gives us a way to be able to approach balancing and create a really well refined game when it comes to that.
It also gives your players a very interesting choice whenever they're actually creating their list. I think I may have mentioned this with you guys before, is that depending on how you build your list, what way you actually balance out that medium, or the light, medium, and heavy. If you went medium and heavy, your opponent's going to get free run on the battlefield very early on to maybe get up, contest objectives, and actually get themselves hunkered down into good positions before you have a chance to actually go after them.
Exactly.
Whereas if you take more light and medium and leave out all the heavy, you might have a fair bit on the table holding stuff, but you might not have the punch to actually break out that last wave that you're just trying to hold on to the end of the game for the win.
And the pressure keeps adding up because the reinforcements come from the most forward line that you have uninterrupted.
Yes.
And the earlier units can cover a lot of the battlefield, and you will bring essentially the medium units the same. Well, maybe really, but very close. You will bring them at the same time as your opponent. So they will not really gain an advantage. Not really. They will be already pressured.
Yeah, it was one thing I was considering recently whenever I was thinking about how to play the game. I was looking at, do I maybe take a small unit of something that's light and fast to just act as a breakthrough unit that you then have to turn back and deal with, or just surrender that deployment area?
Yeah, well, there's always strategies like that, and it's very important for us to be able to strike a good balance when it comes to list building. For example, if you want to go for a lot of small regiments, for example, you would find a cap that would be at about 4 regiments, and then you would have to get another character, then you would have to go at it again. Yeah. So it gives you the ability to go for smaller size regiments, for cheaper regiments, but at the same time it punishes you for overdoing it.
Yeah, if you overdo it, you're having to pay out every time attacks for a new character to get another set in.
Exactly. For example, another part of our balancing is if there are, let's say, some abilities or spells that a character like the priest has it that would be very beneficial to another regiment. When you get the priest, you have to get the priest, and you also have to get a regiment to come along with the priest. So it does regulates a little bit, how you can overuse certain abilities or certain types of regiments.
Yeah, definitely. And then it also sort of benefits you to maybe have a few different types of character on the tabletop to give you access to all those different units that you want to take and actually have the tools in the toolbox to actually deal with situations.
So now going a little bit into the characters that are in the starter set. Now here you get the Cavalry Noble Lord. For you to get an idea. Now it has the supremacy ability for honor, which aids, which actually pairs very well with the household knights that you get in the starter set. Now it allows them to re-roll their impact attacks. The impact attacks is the extra attacks you get when you charge, and that works actually quite well given that they have brutal impact too. That's -2 to the opponent's defense for that impact attack, and it also provides 1 extra attack per stand, so that gives a little bit of an edge when you activate that supremacy ability. You'll see now how your Noble Lord can be benefited from, let's say, Arms Master that gives the character Cleave 2, or let's say a Duelist that gives the Flurry special rule, and so you can make a utility character that can help your army, but at the same time hold its own in combat.
Well, it's letting you build battle tactics into your force before you actually hit the tabletop, which is really nice to have, because it already means that instead of laying your stuff out and then figuring out what you're going to do against your opponent, you already have a plan. This is my unit to do this particular task. This is this unit to do this particular task. And I can see my opponent is laying this and that out, so I'm going to try targeting that unit because I think this ability will work quite well against them, and things like that.
Also, at the end, when you're done with the list, you can always export it into a PDF. And you can just download it, have it with you, have a very good format that resembles this, everything being nice and tight there, and be able to have it with you.
That's really nice to have. Not to mention the fact that if it's one that I've been trying out and testing, and I want to say share it with a friend who plays the same faction and say, here, give this list a go. I built this, it's worked great in my club. How about you take it to yours and see how it does as well? I'm wanting to test it out for a tournament. And actually you can just really spread the knowledge out there as to what you build, what you find works, what you find doesn't.
Yeah, and be able to build the library of those lists. You'll be able to log in and have everything there.
Yeah, and for organized play, having that is great as well, because you're exporting a standardized PDF that you can send to an organizer, and they will very quickly be able to read and know it. I've seen some events where you were literally just typing up a Word document for your list.
Yeah.
And I felt so sorry for some of the organizers, because they had to look at everybody's list that was maybe laid out slightly differently, or the points were in a slightly different place, and it just made more work for them. But this keeps it nice and self-contained for them.
I was going to say exactly that it makes counting points very easy, because it's essentially already done.
Yeah. And
so if you export this, you know the points before you even see.
Yeah, but also if you're an event organizer, you can also check for the legality of a list very quickly, because if someone sends this through, you quickly throw this together in your army builder and go, oh wait, no, that's over points, that's illegal, or oh, they shouldn't have that in there. You know,
exactly. And at the end of
keeps everybody on the same level.
When you export that list, now when it's in its final iteration, now you're also going to get any warnings that you have. For example, you said you have to select at least one option from spells. Now, all these warnings are things that you're going to get on the actual PDF. So when you print that, you know exactly what, like, if you don't have a Warlord, if you don't have enough mainstays for your restricteds and so on, you will have all these different warnings. So that makes it even easier for tournament organizers at the end. And it will count all the stance that you have, the light, the medium, the heavies, and so on. Now, currently, you'll notice that the characters here are just one stand with one miniature.
Yes.
Now, that is, the stand will be provided with a character, and you're free to fill in the rest of the positions with the other models, but these do not add anything. They're purely
for aesthetic. Yeah.
Purely for aesthetic. It might be, though, that later on you might be able to customize your own stand.
Ooh.
So that is something that we'll leave for later.
So your Warlord might be able to bring some vassals along with him or something like that?
That might be the case later on.
Oh, so, teases.
So going on to the Spires and talking a little bit about the Fairmancer. Now, the Fairmancer is the character that the Star Set is going to have for the drones, for the Spires. See, you can see a little bit about their stat. They're definitely not a fighter.
No.
As you can see, the attacks of 2, they're not there to fight themselves. They are there to control the army of drones and clones that they have at their disposal. And
none of the exiles are.
Well,
the whole race behind the Spires are not themselves fighters, not the way we're used to them. As a faction, at least, they're not. So essentially, that's why they create. It's one of the reasons they create all these troops for them to have at their disposal.
Well, I mean, even looking at the character, the way he's actually garbed for battle, this is not heavy armor. This is not someone who wants to be up sword versus staff.
He has aces in his sleeve, though.
Yeah, but I assume he would more rather stand back and say, "Clone warrior, kill them all."
Would it be more accurate? That be it has aces in its sleeves.
Let's not go into that one. Let's not go into that.
That's probably one you guys have sat down with a beer and talked about.
Okay, and now in contrast to the 100 Kingdoms, you'll see that instead of items or heirlooms, the Spires go for mutations. So now there is this quite a long list of all different approaches that the Spires get into making sure that they tailor themselves for combat or for what they want to do.
Sorry, again, this is something that I don't think has been very understood, that it's not only that they create. Biomancy is a gift easily turned inwards. They change themselves. They refine themselves the way they see themselves as perfect. So That's why he said it.
Yes.
So, for instance, one of our artists that created the image that you see over there on the left, one of his when he was exploring the image, he said that it is very possible that the throne is actually made of previous versions of himself, which makes it very creepy.
Yeah.
But it's very close to the core of what an exile is right now, what the Spire Lords and how they think.
Now, tactically on the tabletop, having so many options for mutations, you can really customize yourself. But I have one or two friends who I know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to try and load them out with every mutation they can. Is there any limitations to how many mutations you can have?
Yes, you can have most characters have only one. However, there is a type of character that when becomes the Warlord is able to. It's instead of having a supremacy ability like everybody else, they can load themselves up with as many mutations as they want, as long as they pay for them, and that can create quite a beast.
Yeah. I was just wondering because I'm seeing lots of different abilities there that if you put them all together, you would have something quite monstrous and quite unstable as well, I would say.
Yeah, well,
and you also you'll see the Ferromancies. Now the Biomancer has access to Biomancy and Ferromancer to Ferromancy. I'm sorry. Now that is. What it's good to be understood is that this is not a type of magic. It's not a type of it's an ability that they're more scientists than they are wizards in that sense.
Yeah, it's somewhere in between. I mean, of course it's magic if you think about it, but
what science isn't at some point. After a point.
Well, it's an old thing that was once said to me. Say a caveman was dragged forward to modern day.
Yeah.
He sees a car. This is a big, rolling, rumbling thing. He will think it's some kind of beast or monster. He won't understand how it can work. So if it's technology beyond the actual understanding of the locals, say the 100 Kingdoms, that's magic.
It's not exactly technology, though. It's somewhere in between. I think we have spoken before that the original race of the exiles had this gift they called life binding. It's part of how they evolved. So yes, it is magic because we're talking about a fantasy setting, and this is something that I don't have the rules for it. Not all of them, at least. But on the other hand, for any of the exiles, it is science, especially the Spires. Yeah. For the Spires, they call their leaders, though their leading biomancers, they call them the Directorate. It is very much a science. They approach it very scientifically, very coldly. And that reflects the whole society now of the Spires.
I see.
So it's somewhere in between, which is right where we like it, to be honest.
Yeah. I do have one question. Now, it's just something I very quickly noticed on the screen here. The Abomination, is that the big thing?
Yes. That is the big thing.
Why is it only 145 points?
One of the things you'll see in the game is that a very important balancing factor is that it's a heavy.
Yes.
And that it comes in the game at the end of the game. Also, it's very important to remember that in this game we go from clash or volley saves straight to defense. So it's very important. Conquest has an interesting way of costing things, very simply because things are not on the table for the same amount of time. So the Abomination will be 4 or 5 turns that will not be playing in the game. So it would be quite a leap to cost it as much in comparison to, let's say, a regiment of militia that are actually able to play from the very first turn, and they have an active role throughout the 8 or 9 turns of the game.
See, I love the fact that you guys have actually thought about that. That yes, it's big, it's monstrous, it's going to do a lot of damage, but because it's not there for so long, you don't have to be as harsh with the pointing.
And another thing you'll notice in the army builder, you'll see that when purchasing regiments in your list, you'll see that the same upgrades are costed differently in different regiments.
Yes.
So, for example, a standard bearer would have a different cost in the men at arms, but it would be almost nothing compared to for the militia bowman. So there's not a uniform costing when it comes down to that. It's all about who benefits more from what. And that's something that's very important for us. And let's see a little bit about the Abomination, for example. It's at 145 points, and yet you'll notice that, let's say that a regiment of Corsomen could actually put quite a dent in it.
Yeah, it's big and it's intimidating, but there's nothing that's godlike and unkillable.
So Conquest is a game about trades, and Conquest is a game about cost-efficient trades, and that is something that is good to remember even for us, because when we're costing in and when we're playing, get all the feedbacks from our testers, we see, is it 145 points really? But then you sit down, you play, and you see when it comes onto the table, you'll see what it's facing, what it's fighting against, and you start realizing that perhaps that we have to approach balance differently.
I like the idea. I like the concept, and it's a new way to actually look at gaming miniatures on the tabletop. It's something I'd never considered really much before, was the actual value of how long a thing is there on the table, and it's something that Conquest illustrates so well. So I think it's really going to be a new level of the actual tactics and meta for people when they're actually building their stuff and playing it out on the table. Very curious to see how this plays out.
Yeah, it's it is a game at the end of the day that we want to create a game about strategic foresight. We want to create a game about forward thinking, about thinking in trades, about thinking in steps ahead, and this is what we want to showcase in Conquest. We want to keep rules simple and streamlined, but we want to make sure that you get a very deep tactical experience when playing the game.
Well, from what I've seen, you're going to get it in spades. I mean, like, again, this is making the decision even harder for me to actually go 100 Kings or Spire. I know you want me to go both. Hush.
Let me help you make a list really quick, and I'll tell you exactly how to go about it.
But it's interesting because seeing those tactical choices and that depth being played in a very different way with the timed arrival of stuff, it's intriguing to see, and I'm very, very curious to see that whenever the game actually lands and people start playing and building bigger and bigger forces, to actually see what sort of balances they go for. And then whenever you guys start adding in even more factions and stuff, that's going to be interesting as well. Because I know we've talked about the Dwagon before, which will be hopefully the next faction, I think, if I remember right.
Yes, and people actually were asking a lot, yes, about the Dwagon and the Nords. So I think that it's only fair that we tell them just a little bit more.
Go on.
About the rules and so and. It's good to remember that Dwagon is a race that I'm trying to not spoil too much at the same time.
I think it's not spoiler. I'm thinking you're trying to make sure no one shouts at you back at home base.
Give a good tease, but what I can tell you is that we expect a lot of big things with the Dwagon. We expect a lot of new approaches to how things play in a rank and file in a rank and file game, and how they operate. And I feel we departed enough from the classical tropes when designing the Dwagon, and we wanted to reflect that in the rules. We wanted to reflect, for example, that actually the Dwagon have quite powerful sorceries, and they're quite destructive in their approach to it. So that's something that sets them apart from the classic tropes.
Yeah. Well, there is a piece of art you gave me that I think really, really illustrates that, if I can bring it up, which I think is this here.
Yes.
So what exactly are we looking at here?
Well, I think we have talked before when we were doing some of the lore discussions. We have talked about how the Dwagon were part of a race that was created as slaves and laborers for the dragons.
Yes.
Now we're talking about sort of two types of dragons. Not really, they're the same thing, but dragons, as time progressed and they wanted to procreate, they diminished from a more elementalist nature into a more solid form. So they acquired the concept of I want nice things from the Spires when they met the Spires a very, very long time ago. And they created, through biomancy or a different form that the dragons mastered, they created that slave race, the dwarves that they use, the classic dwarves that we know from Norse mythology.
Yes.
You know, laboring, grumpy, making things and powerful artifacts and beautiful halls for the dragons, always. Of course, they didn't like it. They rebelled a number of times, but because they were creations, it was imprinted in them that whenever a dragon shows up, you will bow. Mm-hmm. So the greatest of the instigators of these rebellions were condemned to go deeper, find better jewels, better veins, everything. And through that, we have talked in detail more about back then, they found this. Now, this is only one of the possible things that they saw. This is an interpretation, let's say, of history. Essentially, what we're seeing is war. Not a war, the war.
Yes.
The, as we know it, horseman war. Mm-hmm. And, well, we've already discussed how they subsumed part of the very essence of war. Mm-hmm. And part of the very essence of the prison of war, because you can see that it is very, in a way, in its own way, it's a very both magical and mechanical construct that keeps him in place, created by the oldest dragons, the very elemental dragons. And here we have war with fire and earth that keeps him in prison, because those are its own elements. So war is internally in war with himself. Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that just in the front of this picture, you just have the little shadow of the progenitors of the Dwagam race, just standing there pointing, going, "The hell's that thing?" And
if you notice towards the lowest parts of the image, you can see that they're already building things now. Mm. So the process of how they went about and broke war and broke his prison as well. Mm. Was a long one. It didn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. It happened through a lot of investigation. They then tried to soak the power from the prison itself, then the war itself, and it didn't happen overnight. That's what I'm trying to say, that it was a learning process for them. The end result, don't forget, is that they essentially broke the world and the dragons with it.
Whoops.
They literally broke the world. I mean, in our Earth history, we have a giant comet falling. On Ea, it was the Dwagom that for one of those cataclysmic events. That's why I always said I want them to win.
Yeah, and then we actually see moving forward just what they now live in. So I assume this is an older dwarven hold that is now.
That is actually inside already a Dwagom hold. It's one of the Nemancy holds, as we call them. Because while they have a lot of power over the elements, over fire and earth, the most ancient power they had was Mnemancy, which is a very specific approach to memory.
Their memories the rune carving, wasn't it?
Exactly. Their memories physically are actually almost perfect for every Dwagom. But they refined this, they built on this, and now the Mnemancers are actually a caste within each hold that keeps the peace, that, well, not really, but tries to keep score of the non-peace. Let's put it this way. Yeah. So that we know who runs the show, who is worth more than the others, as we had discussed before. So yeah, the Dwagom broke the world.
I see.
And it's been a long time since then. They too have diminished from that original power their ancestors had. And the tools at their disposal to be able to do this, but they do have some pretty powerful tools.
Sure. And there is a piece of art that we have that really
which one?
That really showcases this. There we go.
What we got here?
That really showcases.
Yes. So this is actually King Theoden. You can find him on our website in our gallery to read a bit more about him. So. You can see that he's just one king in one hold. Yeah. Now, the interesting detail here is that he comes from the Dwagom hold of Gleilgas. Now, Gleilgas, the humans have translated it as it cries joyful, because the wind passes through the halls and that echoes through the mountains, and it makes a weird whistling sound that the humans found it poetic to name that. And they knew the name that comes from the Dwagom words for joy and cry.
Yeah.
For the Dwagom, it means to our joy it cries. And they're talking about
to ask that.
The little guy on the back.
Yeah, looking right above the king's head.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something chained in there. Something.
Yes, they didn't kill everything, let's say. So
No, not for a lack of trying, though.
no, that's the thing. And actually, it's part of their mentality, just to let you see that, for instance, King Theoden, the way he became king, because you need to prove your worth, is that he made the, let's say, prisoner cry, and in that single tear he bathed alone, without any machinery, without any magic. He just made the dragon cry. And that proved his worth.
Okay, I have to read that story when it comes out. That has me curious. How do you make a dragon cry?
When you're a Duergom, you find ways. You have perfected the art.
It was the greatest case of insulting.
It could just start numbering the relatives that his forefathers have.
This is an army list that I am waiting to see with bated breath. I'm very curious to see what sort of twist and take you do on the dwarves or the Dwagon race.
This is that's a very good highlight into what to really expect from the Dwargom. They're very aggressive, but yet refining the way they approach war. They are not nice, and they like big things, and they know how to build them, and also destroy them. So that will be.
I see. It'll be interesting to see what you create.
And that can be your third army.
Every army must be mine.
Yeah, don't worry about it. The moment that comes out, I'll make sure I have you a list with a PDF and straight.
Justin, here you go. God damn it!
Yeah. Well, now you have to make that one too.
Yeah, I love the detail work that has went into him. Though there's such a brutality to every piece of Dwagam art that I've seen. Everything is completely functional, completely designed. Even this man's beard looks like it could be used as a weapon. Let's be honest here.
And armor and weapon and
yeah,
I don't know, maybe for them foreplay.
No, not for that. I don't need to see that aspect of Dwagam society.
We won't. What I'm trying to explain is that this is a society that takes itself very seriously. In the way that it takes war very seriously, and they're all about war, not mindless, not anymore. At least that is part of the reason why they can break the world, essentially, because they have come to for their standards, at least mellow down in a way.
Well, you see, there seems to be a balance being struck from our previous discussions when we talked about the Dwagam. We had like the different priestly caste, actually how they would actually deal with those who showed aspects of elementalism within the Dwagam race. Again, another fantastic video to go back and check out, everybody. Right, anything else to cover, gents?
That would have been. I would only leave you with the last art for the Nords.
Oh dear!
And I would leave it there. This is a piece of art that you can find in our website as well.
Yeah.
Oh my word! Who is this? I must discover the truth of this warrior.
more about the story of the Nords and more about behind that. There's a lot of stuff in our website that you can.
I will give you, just because I like teasing, I will give you 2 pointers, because you can actually find this image again on our website. I will give you 2 things to consider. A, the weird markings on his chest.
Yeah, and there's been some shenanigans there.
Well, 3, let's say 3. 2, then, where he is sitting.
Yeah, I'm seeing lots of dead stuff.
Well, it's not stuff, it's people.
No, they're dead, they are not his stuff.
This is what very I get to take home now.
And 3, the helmet. Because there are hints about, let's say, subplots, in a way.
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous piece of artwork. Actually seeing the brutality of him as well. I mean, like, he feels so barbaric, but there's a nobility behind him.
Look at the size. I mean, the size compared to those dead guys. He is one of the Ankhirjar that we talked before. One of those exalted beings that have.
I see.
Yeah.
And you can only guess what he does when rules-wise.
I am guessing
he excels at carpentry.
Building furniture.
Not after my own heart, right to my roots.
Fourth timing for you.
Well, guys, it's always a pleasure to have you in. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for that deeper look at the world of Conquest and what you guys have been up to. I love the way you're doing your army builder. It looks as if it's going to be really intuitive, and it's going to make people look at army building in a whole new way that we have never seen before.
We hope so.
Everybody, I'll tell you what, get your comments in below. Are you looking forward to getting this game into your hands? We will move on. We will see you another time.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now, and be sure to check out beastsofwar.com for the latest gaming news and gaming Let's Plays. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe, and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.